He only reached for what he was allowed to touch. Nothing stolen, nothing broken. But in that moment, a store owner decided his hand didn't belong there and slapped it away in front of everyone. The room went silent, the humiliation loud enough to linger long after he walked out. What no one knew was that this wasn't the end of the story, because just 24 hours later, that same man would walk back through those doors, and power would shift in a way no one was prepared for. The question is, what happens when disrespect meets authority? Before that moment in the store, his life was simple and quiet. He worked long hours, kept his head down, and avoided trouble whenever he could. Every morning followed the same rhythm. Wake up early, commute across town, do his job, come home tired but grateful. He wasn't chasing attention or conflict. He just wanted stability in a world that rarely offered it. That store was part of his routine, a place he stopped by without thinking, like hundreds of times before. He knew the aisles, the layout, even the smell of the floor cleaner near the entrance. To him, it was just another stop on the way home. To others, it was a place where rules seemed to change depending on who walked through the door. He had learned early in life how to stay invisible. Move calmly, speak less, don't give anyone a reason to misunderstand you. Those habits came from experience, not fear, but they didn't always protect him. Some looks lingered longer than they should. Some assumptions were made before he ever opened his mouth. That day felt no different at first. The store was busy, people coming and going, noise blending into the background. Nothing warned him that this routine moment was about to turn into something heavier, something public, something that would follow him long after he left the building. What he didn't realize was that a single gesture, barely a second long, was about to expose a quiet truth many people preferred not to see. And once it happened, there would be no undoing it. The only question was how far the consequences would reach. The moment his hand was slapped away, something shifted in the room. It wasn't loud, but it was heavy. Eyes turned, movement slowed. The kind of silence that follows humiliation settled in, thick and uncomfortable. He felt it immediately. Not just the sting in his skin, but the weight of being judged without a word spoken. He pulled his hand back instinctively, aware that every step he took now carried scrutiny. What followed wasn't an apology or an explanation. It was something colder, a look that suggested authority, ownership, and permission to decide who belonged and who didn't. The store suddenly felt smaller, the aisles tighter. He became aware of his breathing, of how carefully he needed to move, how quickly a moment could spiral if he reacted the wrong way. People watched, but no one intervened. Some avoided eye contact. Others stared just long enough to confirm what they thought they already knew. That familiar feeling returned, the one he had carried since childhood, the understanding that dignity could be taken in seconds, and no one would rush to give it back. He left the store without finishing what he came for, stepping outside with his heart pounding harder than it should have. The slap replayed in his mind again and again, each time sharper than before. It wasn't just about the action. It was about the assumption behind it. The belief that he could be corrected, controlled, embarrassed publicly, and expected to accept it. But the incident didn't end at the door. Word spread quickly. Employees whispered. Security footage was reviewed and quietly set aside. The store went on with business as usual, as if nothing had happened, as if a line hadn't been crossed. What no one noticed was what he did next. That night, he didn't react with anger or public outrage. There were no posts, no calls, no demands. Instead, there was silence. The kind of silence that comes before something decisive. While the store closed its lights and locked its doors, he was piecing together something much larger than anyone imagined. Meanwhile, inside the store, confidence grew. The incident was already being minimized, reframed, dismissed as nothing serious. Power has a way of protecting itself, especially when it believes it will never be challenged. But beneath that confidence was a vulnerability no one saw coming. By the next morning, routines resumed. Employees arrived expecting another ordinary shift. The store owner walked in with the same certainty as always, unaware that the balance he relied on had already begun to tip. Because while everyone assumed the man who was slapped would disappear quietly, He was preparing to return, not as a customer, not as a victim, but as something far more dangerous to those who believed they were untouchable. And when he walked back through those doors, the truth would surface in a way no one inside could escape. The doors opened again, just like any other morning. The bell rang. Employees barely looked up. To them, it was just another customer stepping inside. But within seconds, the air changed. He didn't move like someone unsure or hesitant anymore. His posture was steady, his presence undeniable. The same man who had been dismissed the day before now stood with a quiet confidence that demanded attention. The store owner noticed him almost immediately. The recognition wasn't instant, but when it came, it landed hard. The memory of that slap resurfaced, colliding with the reality standing in front of him. Something was different. There was no fear in the man's eyes this time, no caution, only calm. What followed was not raised voices or chaos. It was something far more unsettling. Papers were produced. Authority was revealed. A truth that had been invisible just 24 hours earlier now sat in plain sight. The store owner's certainty cracked as the power dynamic flipped without warning. The room seemed to shrink as understanding spread. Employees froze. The confidence that once filled the space drained away, replaced by disbelief. The man who had been humiliated was no longer subject to assumptions or control. He was untouchable now, not because he demanded respect, but because it could no longer be denied. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone watching. Every quiet judgment made the day before suddenly felt exposed. The slap that had seemed so small now echoed louder than ever. It wasn't just an act of disrespect. It was a mistake with consequences. For the store owner, there was nowhere left to stand. The authority he had relied on dissolved, replaced by accountability. The roles had reversed completely, and there was no escaping the truth written into that moment. As silence filled the store once more, one realization became impossible to ignore. Power does not always look powerful, until the moment it is taken away. And what happened next would force everyone in that room to confront the cost of what they had witnessed. The moment passed, but its impact did not. The store did not return to normal, and neither did the people inside it. What had been exposed could not be unseen. Policies were reviewed. Leadership changed. Conversations that had been avoided for years were suddenly unavoidable. Accountability, once distant, became real. For him, the incident ended without celebration. There was no victory parade, no sense of triumph. What remained was something quieter and heavier, the knowledge that respect should never have required proof of power in the first place. He walked away not feeling larger than anyone else, but more aware of how easily dignity can be taken when prejudice goes unchecked. The humiliation he experienced was not unique. It was familiar. It echoed stories told in whispers and headlines read too often. A reminder that racism does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it appears in small, casual actions, gestures so quick they are dismissed as misunderstandings, yet damaging enough to leave permanent scars. This moment forced a reckoning beyond one store and one man. It exposed how assumptions are made, how silence enables harm, and how power often feels comfortable acting without consequence. Until it doesn't. The story lingered because it reflected something larger than a single act of injustice. It reflected a system where respect is unevenly distributed, where humanity is too often conditional. And while this story ended with accountability, countless others do not. The question is not whether moments like this still happen. They do. Every day. The real question is what we choose to do when we witness them. Do we look away? Do we excuse them? Or do we challenge them before another ordinary moment turns into lifelong trauma? Because change does not begin with power, it begins with awareness. And awareness begins with stories like this one. If the story moved you, let it be a reminder that change begins with awareness. Every voice matters, including yours. So if you believe stories like this need to be heard, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more eye-opening stories just like this one. Your support helps bring these truths into the light.